Tesla's biggest factory builds one car in 40 seconds. That's not automation, that's a total rewrite of how cars get made. By the end of this video, you'll understand why legacy automakers can't compete on speed anymore, how Tesla turned a factory into a machine that prints vehicles, and why the 40-second benchmark means the entire cost structure of the auto industry just became obsolete. Let me ask you something. When you think about a car factory, what comes to mind? Assembly lines, workers with clipboards, robots welding pieces together one at a time? Maybe you picture it taking days to finish a single vehicle. Now imagine this. A brand new Tesla Model Y rolls off the line. 40 seconds later, another one. 40 seconds after that, another. Every 40 seconds, another car, fully built, ready to drive. That's not a future prediction, that's happening right now in Shanghai, and it's breaking every rule the car industry thought was sacred. Here's what makes this crazy. Ford's best factory builds an F-150 every 49 seconds, and Ford has been making trucks for over a century. Tesla opened Gigafactory Shanghai in December 2019, less than 1 year from breaking ground to first production, and now they're faster than Ford, faster than Toyota, faster than Volkswagen. How is that even possible? The answer isn't just robots, it's not just automation, it's something far more radical. Tesla didn't just improve the old system, they deleted it, and what they replaced it with is something the industry has never seen before. It's called the Unboxed Process, and once you understand how it works, you'll realize why every legacy car maker is panicking right now.
But before we go deeper, let me know something. Do you own a Tesla, or are you thinking about buying one? Drop a yes in the comments. I want to see how many of you are actually in the market for this, because what I'm about to show you will completely change how you think about car value. Let's start with the most shocking number. A Tesla Model Y takes 2.5 hours to build. Total assembly time from raw material to finished car, 2.5 hours. The Volkswagen ID.3 takes over 30 hours. The same type of car, same size, same electric platform. Volkswagen needs 30 hours. Tesla needs 2.5. That's not a 10% improvement. That's not even double the speed. That's 12 times faster. Now you might be thinking, okay, they're just rushing it, cutting corners, sacrificing quality for speed. But here's the thing. Teslas built in Shanghai score higher on quality metrics than Teslas built in Fremont, California, the original factory. European buyers consistently rate Shanghai-built Model Ys as better built than American ones. So it's not about rushing, it's about redesigning the entire process from first principles. And that redesign starts with something called Giga Casting. Picture a traditional car frame. It's made of hundreds of small metal parts, stamped pieces, welded together, glued, riveted, bolted, over 100 different components just for the rear underbody alone. Tesla looked at that and said, what if we made it one piece, one single piece of aluminum, cast in one shot? They built the world's largest die casting machines to do this, 6,000 to 9,000 tons of pressure. These machines inject molten aluminum into a mold and produce the entire rear frame in 90 seconds. 90 seconds for what used to take hours of welding and assembly. And it's not just faster, it's lighter, it's stronger, and it eliminates over 100 robots from the production line. Here's the key insight. When you remove 100 welding steps, you also remove 100 opportunities for defects. You remove the need for massive welding bays. You shrink the factory footprint by 40%. Less space means lower rent, lower energy costs, faster construction of new factories. This is how Tesla built Gigafactory Shanghai in under a year, while traditional automakers need 3 to 5 years just to plan a new plant. Now, let me tell you about the Unboxed Process, because Giga Casting is just one piece. The real revolution is in how the car gets assembled. Every car factory in the world follows the same basic logic. The frame moves down a line, workers and robots build around it, step by step, station by station. It's called sequential assembly, and it's incredibly inefficient. Think about it. If you need to install seats, you have to reach into a half-built car through the door openings. If you need to wire the dashboard, you're cramming your hands into tight spaces. If you need to lay carpet, you're working in a confined shell. Every task is harder because the car is already partially closed up.
Tesla said, what if we don't do it that way? What if we build the car in 6 separate modules and assemble them in parallel? The front casting gets built on its own line, the rear casting on another. The battery pack, which is also the floor of the car, gets built separately. The doors are finished on their own line, the roof is built independently, and the side panels are prepared in parallel. Here's why that's genius. When the battery pack is still flat and open, you can install the seats from above. no cramped spaces. You can lay the carpet in seconds. You can wire everything with perfect access. Same with the doors. When they're on a separate line, you can install the windows, the speakers, the handles, the trim, all while the door is laying flat. No awkward angles, no climbing into tight spaces. And then at the very end, all 6 modules come together. The front casting, the rear casting, the battery pack with seats already installed, the doors, the roof, the side panels. They join in one final assembly step. Click. Everything connects. The wiring harness plugs in with one connector thanks to a new system called Etherloop. The whole car snaps together like Lego. This parallel assembly increases worker productivity by 44%. It improves overall efficiency by 30%, and it reduces the factory footprint by 40%. That's why Gigafactory Shanghai can pump out a car every 40 seconds, while taking up less space than a traditional plant.
Let me ask you this. If you could redesign your job from scratch, what would you change? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what process in your life feels outdated and slow, because that's exactly what Tesla did here. They looked at a 100-year-old process and asked, why are we still doing it this way? Now let's talk about the supply chain, because speed in the factory means nothing if you're waiting weeks for parts to arrive. Gigafactory Shanghai has something no other Tesla factory has: 95% localization. That means 95% of the parts in a Shanghai-built Tesla come from suppliers within a few hours of the factory. Battery packs, chips, autonomous driving computers, seats, glass, trim, paint, almost everything is made locally. When the factory opened in 2019, localization was only 30%. Tesla was importing most parts from the US and Europe. That caused delays, it increased costs, it made the factory vulnerable to supply chain shocks. So Tesla spent 3 years aggressively courting Chinese suppliers and building out a regional ecosystem. By 2023, they hit 95%, and the results are staggering. The factory can run at maximum capacity for months without delays. If a supplier has an issue, Tesla engineers can drive there in an hour and fix it. Compare that to Fremont, where parts might come from Japan, Germany, Mexico, and 5 US states. Every additional mile in the supply chain adds risk and time. Here's the financial impact. Gigafactory Shanghai produced over 916,000 vehicles in 2024. That's half of Tesla's global production from one factory. And in early 2026, Shanghai's share rose to 52% of total deliveries. This single factory in China is now more important to Tesla than every other factory combined. But it's not just about volume, it's about cost. Tesla's cost per vehicle in Shanghai is estimated to be 30 to 40% lower than in Fremont. Lower labor costs, shorter supply chains, faster production, higher automation, all of that adds up. And it's why Tesla could afford to slash prices in 2024 and still remain profitable while legacy automakers bled money. Let's talk margins. Tesla's gross profit margin fell to 18.4% in 2024, down from 23.3% in 2023. That sounds bad, but compare it to Ford's margin. Ford's operating margin in 2024 was 1.7%. Volkswagen's was 2.6%. Even with price cuts, Tesla is making 5 to 10 times more profit per car than traditional automakers. And here's the kicker. Tesla's margin compression wasn't because they couldn't make money. It was a strategic choice. They dropped prices to drive volume, to force competitors into a price war they can't win. Because when your cost structure is 40% lower, you can afford to sell cheaper and still make money. Your competitors can't. Think about that for a second. Tesla can lower prices and still make more profit per car than Ford or Volkswagen. That's not a competitive advantage, that's a structural moat.
It comes directly from the manufacturing speed we're talking about. The 40-second car isn't just impressive, it's a weapon. Now here's where most people get confused. They hear 40 seconds and think that's how long it takes to build one car start to finish. That's not what it means. The 40-second number is what's called takt time. It's the rate at which completed cars come off the line. But each individual car spends much longer in the factory. A Model Y spends about 2.5 hours in total assembly. A Model 3 takes around 10 hours because of differences in how the platforms are integrated. But because multiple cars are being built simultaneously across all those parallel assembly lines, a finished car emerges every 40 seconds. It's like a relay race. Each runner takes time to complete their leg. But if you have enough runners going at once, someone crosses the finish line every few seconds. This distinction matters because it shows you the real genius of the system. It's not about making individual tasks faster. It's about running more tasks at the same time. Traditional factories are limited by bottlenecks. One slow station holds up the entire line. Tesla's parallel system eliminates bottlenecks. Every module progresses independently, and they all converge at the end. If you're following along, hit subscribe, because we're about to dive into the part where this gets uncomfortable. The human cost, the quality concerns, and the robots that might replace every factory worker on Earth. Here's something most people don't know. Gigafactory Shanghai is 95% automated. That means only 5% of the work is done by humans. The rest is robots. Over 1,000 robots on the line, welding and assembling, inspecting moving parts, even applying the exact torque to every screw. Tesla's system can track every single screw in every single car. It knows the torque, the angle, the time it was installed. If a screw fails 5 years later, Tesla can trace it back to the exact robot, the exact shift, the exact batch of screws. That level of traceability is unheard of in the auto industry. And it's only possible because of extreme digitization. But automation has a dark side. In February 2023, a 31-year-old worker died in a welding workshop accident at Gigafactory Shanghai. Government inspectors found that the worker failed to follow safety protocols, but they also found weaknesses in Tesla's safety measures. After the incident, workers reported on social media that their quarterly bonuses were cut by 2,000 yuan, about $291. They saw it as punishment for a collective failure. This tension between speed and safety is real. When you're trying to build a car every 40 seconds, every second counts. There's immense pressure on workers. Some Chinese media outlets called the factory a Giga sweatshop in 2020. Allegations of cutting corners for volume. Tesla denied it. They pointed to their digital tracking systems as proof of quality. But the perception remains. And here's where it gets interesting. Elon Musk has talked for years about lights-out manufacturing. A factory with no humans, just robots, running 24/7 in the dark because robots don't need light. That vision is starting to become real. Tesla is developing a humanoid robot called Optimus. And Gigafactory Texas is the testing ground. Optimus is designed to handle repetitive tasks. Picking up parts, moving boxes, installing components, tasks that are ergonomically challenging for humans. Tesla aims to deploy thousands of Optimus robots in North American plants by the end of 2025. And they want to produce 1 million Optimus units per year by 2030. If that happens, the need for human workers could drop by 40% in high-velocity plants. That's not speculation. That's Tesla's stated goal. And it raises a huge question. What happens to the 19,000 workers currently employed at Gigafactory Shanghai when robots can do their jobs? Let me know in the comments. Do you think robots taking factory jobs is progress or a problem? Type progress or problem. I want to see where people stand on this because it's not a simple answer. Now let's talk quality. Because speed and automation are great, but do the cars actually hold up? The answer is complicated. Tesla has faced massive recalls in China. In April 2022, over 14,000 Model 3s were recalled for software faults affecting speed displays. In other recalls, nearly 128,000 vehicles were called back for semiconductor defects. There have been reports of suspension failures, sudden unintended acceleration claims, panel gaps, paint issues. Some of this is real, some of it is overblown. But the reputation hit is real. In China, Tesla has had to fight the perception that they prioritize speed over safety. However, here's the counterpoint. Consumer Reports and European safety agencies consistently rate Shanghai-built Teslas as higher quality than Fremont-built ones. Third-party teardowns show tighter panel gaps, better paint, more consistent assembly. So, while there are issues, the data suggests that the newer factory designs and localized supply chains actually improve quality even at higher speeds. Tesla's internal data backs this up. Their management operating system tracks every part through its entire life cycle. If a batch of batteries has a defect, they know exactly which cars got them. They can issue targeted recalls instead of blanket ones. This precision is only possible with extreme digitization. And it's something legacy automakers are decades away from achieving. But here's what nobody talks about. The quality issues aren't a bug. They're a feature of Tesla's philosophy. Tesla treats every car as a data point. When something fails, they learn from it. They push software updates. They refine the manufacturing process. They iterate. Traditional automakers spend years testing before launch to avoid recalls. Tesla launches and fixes problems in real time. Is that approach better? It depends on your perspective. If you're an early Tesla owner, you're essentially a beta tester. You're paying full price to help them work out the kinks. But if you buy a Tesla 3 years into production, you're getting a vehicle that's been refined through millions of miles of real-world data. The car gets better over time, and that's only possible because of the speed at which Tesla can implement changes. Now let's zoom out and look at what Gigafactory Shanghai has actually accomplished. The factory went from breaking ground to first production in less than 12 months. That's insane. Most car factories take 3 to 5 years just to get approvals and permits. Tesla did it in 11 months. How? Part of it is China's willingness to fast-track foreign investment in strategic industries. The Shanghai government saw Tesla as a flagship project, a symbol of China's openness to advanced manufacturing. They cleared bureaucratic hurdles. They provided land in the Lingang New area at favorable terms. They helped Tesla recruit suppliers. The whole process was greased. But speed in construction also came from Tesla's factory design philosophy. Traditional auto plants are custom built. Every factory is different, unique layouts. Unique tooling. Tesla is moving towards standardized factories. Gigafactory Shanghai was a template. Gigafactory Berlin used the same basic design. Gigafactory Texas expanded it. This modular approach to factory construction means Tesla can replicate success. They don't reinvent the wheel every time. And the results speak for themselves. Gigafactory Shanghai hit its 1 millionth vehicle in August 2022, less than 3 years after opening. The second million came in September 2023, just 13 months later. The third million in October 2024. The fourth million in December 2025. The pace is accelerating. Compare that to Toyota's best plants, which produce around 400,000 vehicles per year after decades of optimization. Gigafactory Shanghai is producing over 900,000 vehicles per year in its 5th year of operation. And it's still ramping. The factory has room to expand to over 1 million units annually. But production volume is only part of the story. The other part is export reach. Gigafactory Shanghai isn't just serving China. It's serving Europe, Asia, Australia, and parts of the Middle East. Over half of Shanghai's production is exported. That makes it Tesla's global manufacturing hub. Why is that significant? Because it means Tesla can leverage China's supply chain advantages and labor costs to serve the entire Eastern Hemisphere. A Model Y built in Shanghai and sold in Germany is cheaper than a Model Y built in Berlin and sold in Germany. At least for now. That's the power of the 40-second talk time. It's not just about speed. It's about cost efficiency that scales globally. And here's where the geopolitical tension comes in. Western governments are increasingly uncomfortable with their dependence on Chinese manufacturing. The US Inflation Reduction Act offers tax credits for EVs built in North America. The European Union is investigating Chinese EV subsidies. There's a growing push to reshore critical supply chains. But here's the problem. You can't just move Gigafactory Shanghai to Michigan and expect the same results. The 95% localized supply chain doesn't exist in the US. The skilled labor pool is different. The regulatory environment is different. The cost structure is different. Even if Tesla wanted to replicate Shanghai's success in America, it would take years and billions of dollars. That's why Gigafactory Texas and Gigafactory Berlin are important, but still lag behind Shanghai. Texas produces around 300,000 vehicles per year. Berlin produces around 250,000. They're ramping. But they're not at Shanghai's level yet. And they might never be, unless the US and Europe build out the same kind of supply chain ecosystem China has. If you're still watching, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'm curious how global this audience is. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We're about to get into the most important part. The $25,000 car that could end the gasoline era forever. All right, here's where this gets wild. Everything I just described, the Giga Casting, the Unboxed Process, the localization, the automation, all of that is version 1. Tesla is now building version 2, and it's designed for one purpose: to make a $25,000 electric car that still turns a profit. The project is codenamed Redwood. It's expected to be a compact SUV or hatchback. Think the size of a Toyota Corolla or Volkswagen Golf. And it will use an even more extreme version of the Unboxed Process. The front and rear will both be Giga Cast single pieces. The battery will be structural, meaning it is the floor. No separate frame. The whole car will snap together from just a few massive modules. Tesla's goal is to cut production costs by 50% compared to the Model 3. 50%. And if they hit that target, they can sell the car for $25,000 and still make the same profit margin as a $50,000 Model Y. That would be catastrophic for competitors. Why? Because the mass market is where the volume is. Toyota sells millions of Corollas every year. Volkswagen sells millions of Golfs. Honda sells millions of Civics. These are the cars normal people buy, not luxury vehicles, not trucks. Affordable, practical daily drivers, and they're all still running on gasoline. If Tesla can make an electric car at that price point with better performance, lower running costs, and access to the supercharger network, the internal combustion engine is finished in that segment. And once the mass market flips to electric, it's game over for oil demand growth. We're talking about a structural shift in global energy consumption. Production of the Model 2, as it's being called, is slated to begin in the second half of 2025 at Gigafactory, Texas. Then it will expand to Mexico and Germany. If Tesla can ramp production to the same 40-second takt time they have in Shanghai, they could flood the market with millions of cheap EVs per year. But here's the catch. Tesla isn't the only one going after this market. Chinese automakers are already there. BYD has multiple models under $30,000. Geely Dongnayu Xpeng, they're all launching affordable EVs, and they have the same manufacturing advantages Tesla has in China. Low-cost labor, localized supply chains, government support. BYD sold more battery electric vehicles than Tesla in 2025. They captured 23.1% of the global BEV market. Tesla was second at 10.5%. That's a massive gap, and it's growing. BYD is expanding into Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. They're building factories in Thailand, Brazil, and Hungary. This is the real battle. Not Tesla versus Ford, not Tesla versus Volkswagen. Tesla versus BYD. And the winner of that battle will define the next decade of transportation. Because whoever can make the cheapest EV at scale wins the mass market. And whoever wins the mass market controls the industry. Now let's talk about what this means for legacy automakers. Because they're not sitting still. They see what's happening. And they're trying to adapt. But adaptation is harder than it looks. Toyota, the king of manufacturing efficiency, announced a new wholly owned subsidiary in Shanghai to build Lexus EVs and batteries. This is Toyota's first wholly owned vehicle operation in China. They're doing it to copy the localized supply chain model that Tesla proved works. Toyota is also exploring Giga Casting and modular assembly to reduce production time. But Toyota has a problem. They've spent decades perfecting the internal combustion engine. Their hybrid technology is the best in the world. They have billions of dollars invested in gasoline infrastructure, suppliers, tooling, expertise. Switching to EVs means writing off a huge chunk of that investment. It's not just a technical challenge, it's an existential crisis. Volkswagen is in the same boat. They launched an initiative called China Speed. Their goal is to cut vehicle development time from 60 months to 36 months. Why? Because Chinese competitors are iterating in 18 months. Volkswagen realized their traditional European timelines are suicide in this market. They're too slow. By the time they finish designing a car, the market has moved on. But even with China Speed, Volkswagen is still slower than Tesla and BYD. And speed isn't their only problem. Cost is. Volkswagen's labor costs in Germany are 5 times higher than in China. Their supply chains are global and complex. Their factories are old and designed for the old process. Retooling is expensive and time-consuming. Volkswagen's Zwickau plant in Germany was converted to build the ID.3. The conversion took 3 years and cost over 1 billion euros. And even after all that investment, the plant still takes 30 hours to build one car. Tesla built Gigafactory Shanghai from dirt to full production in 11 months. And it builds cars in 2.5 hours. That's the gap, and it's not closing. It's widening. Ford is trying to compete with the F-150 Lightning and the Mustang Mach-E. But Ford's operating margin in 2024 was 1.7%. They're barely profitable. One bad quarter and they're losing money. They can't afford a prolonged price war with Tesla. And they definitely can't compete with BYD on cost. Ford has filed patents for parallel assembly lines and something they call unicasting. It's their version of Giga Casting. They've seen the writing on the wall. If they don't adopt these methods, they'll be uncompetitive. But adopting them requires rebuilding their entire manufacturing infrastructure. That takes years and billions of dollars. And there's no guarantee it will work. Here's the brutal truth. Legacy automakers are trapped. They have massive factories built for the old process. Thousands of workers trained in the old way. Supplier contracts locked in for years. Union agreements that make rapid changes nearly impossible. Pension obligations. Dealer networks. Switching to the Unboxed Process isn't just a technical challenge. It's a political and financial nightmare. Tesla doesn't have those problems. They built their factories from scratch with the new process in mind. They have no legacy infrastructure to abandon. No decades-old supplier relationships to unwind. No unions blocking automation. They're free to move fast. And that freedom is a massive competitive advantage. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're running a pizza restaurant. You've been making pizzas the same way for 30 years. Hand-tossed dough, tomato sauce from your grandmother's recipe, a brick oven you imported from Italy. Your process works, people love your pizza. But then a competitor opens across the street with a completely different system. Automated dough machines, precision sauce dispensers, a conveyor oven that pumps out pizzas in 3 minutes, and they're selling pizzas for half your price. You could try to compete by automating your restaurant. But your brick oven can't be retrofitted. Your staff doesn't know how to use the new machines. Your suppliers can't deliver the pre-made dough the automated system requires. You'd have to shut down, rebuild everything, retrain everyone, and hope your customers wait for you. That's the position Ford and Volkswagen are in. They can see the future, but getting there means destroying the present. And here's the worst part. Even if they successfully retool, they're still playing catch-up. By the time Ford figures out Giga Casting, Tesla will have moved on to the next innovation. Dry electrode batteries. Optimus robots. Fully autonomous factories. The gap doesn't shrink just because you start running. The leader keeps moving too. Comment legacy. If you think traditional car makers can survive this, comment toast if you think they're finished. I want to see what the consensus is. Now let's talk about what happens if Tesla succeeds with the $25,000 Model 2. Because the implications go way beyond cars. If Tesla can build an EV that cheap and still make money, it proves that the Unboxed Process works at mass market scale. And if it works for cars, it can work for other products. Elon Musk has hinted at using the same manufacturing philosophy for housing. Prefabricated modules built in parallel and assembled on site. Imagine buying a house that snaps together like a Tesla. Delivered in weeks instead of months. Half the cost of traditional construction. Fully wired, fully insulated, ready to move in. Or apply it to consumer electronics. Phones, laptops, appliances. What if every product category adopted this modular, parallel assembly approach? You'd see a deflationary wave across the entire economy. Products would get cheaper, faster to produce, more customizable, and companies that cling to old manufacturing methods would be obliterated. This is why the 40-second car matters. It's not just about Tesla. It's about proving that a new way of making things is possible. And once it's proven, everyone will copy it. We're watching the industrialization of the 21st century in real time. And it's happening faster than anyone expected. Here's another angle nobody talks about: energy. Building a car every 40 seconds requires enormous amounts of energy. The die casting machines alone consume megawatts of power. The robotic assembly lines run constantly. The paint booths, the battery conditioning systems. All of it needs electricity. Gigafactory Shanghai has invested heavily in renewable energy. Solar panels on the roof, energy storage systems to smooth out demand peaks. But the bulk of the power still comes from the grid. And in China that means coal. Tesla's cars might be zero emissions when driving, but building them still has a carbon footprint. This creates an interesting paradox. The faster Tesla builds cars, the more emissions the factory produces in the short term. But the more EVs on the road, the fewer emissions from transportation in the long term. It's a trade-off, and it raises the question, how fast should we push this transition? Is it better to build 10 million EVs over 10 years, or 100 million over 3 years, if it means higher factory emissions now? The answer probably depends on your time horizon. If you're worried about climate targets for 2030, you want maximum EV production as fast as possible, even if factories are dirty. If you're thinking long-term, you might prioritize cleaning up the grid first and ramping EV production more slowly. There's no easy answer, but here's what we know. Gigafactory Shanghai is going full speed, and Tesla's broader strategy is clear. Build as many EVs as possible, as fast as possible. Drive down costs through scale. Force competitors to either adapt or die. And hope that the grid gets cleaner while all this is happening. Now let's zoom out one more time and look at the big picture. What does the 40-second car tell us about the future of manufacturing? Three things. First, modularity wins. Breaking complex products into simple modules that can be built in parallel is the key to speed. This applies to cars, electronics, buildings, maybe even food production. The more you can parallelize, the faster you can scale. Second, vertical integration matters. Tesla controls more of its supply chain than any other automaker. They make their own batteries, their own motors, their own software, their own seats in some factories. That control allows them to move faster and optimize the whole system. Companies that rely on external suppliers are always slower and more fragile. Third, digital integration is non-negotiable. Tesla's factories are run by software. Every robot, every part, every screw, it's all tracked digitally. That allows for precision, traceability, and continuous improvement. Legacy manufacturers still use a patchwork of systems. Paper checklists, manual inspections, disconnected databases. They can't compete with a fully integrated digital factory. These three principles, modularity, vertical integration, and digital integration, are going to define the next generation of manufacturing across every industry. And the companies that adopt them first will dominate. The ones that don't will be footnotes. Before we wrap up, let me tell you the one thing that keeps me up at night about all this. It's not the technology, it's the concentration of power. If Tesla and a handful of Chinese automakers control the future of transportation, they also control a huge chunk of the global economy. Cars aren't just products, they're infrastructure, they're jobs, they're tax revenue, they're strategic assets. What happens when a few companies in a few countries produce almost all the world's vehicles? What happens to the workers in Detroit, Stuttgart, and Tokyo? What happens to the suppliers who can't keep up? What happens to the countries that don't have the resources to build these hyper-efficient factories? We could be heading toward a world where manufacturing is concentrated in a few mega factories in a few countries, and everyone else is dependent. That has huge geopolitical implications, trade dependencies, supply chain vulnerabilities, economic inequality. It's not just about who makes the fastest car. It's about who controls the infrastructure of modern life. All right, let's bring this home. The 40-second car is real. It's happening right now in Shanghai, and it represents the biggest shift in manufacturing since Henry Ford's assembly line. Tesla has rewritten the rules of how cars are made, and in doing so, they've created a competitive advantage that legacy automakers may never overcome. The Unboxed Process. Giga Casting. Localized supply chains, extreme automation. These aren't incremental improvements, they're a complete reimagining of industrial production. And the results speak for themselves. Faster production, lower costs, higher margins, better quality. It's a system that scales. But the story doesn't end here. The $25,000 Model 2 is coming. Optimus robots are coming. Autonomous factories are coming. And the wave of Chinese competition is already here. The next 5 years will determine whether Tesla stays on top or gets swallowed by the monster it helped create. So, here's my final question for you. Do you think legacy automakers can survive this transition? Or are they headed for the same fate as Blockbuster and Kodak? Comment survive or extinct. I want to see what you think. And if you made it this far, you're clearly serious about understanding the future. Do yourself a favor and subscribe, because the next wave of this revolution is already starting. And I'll be breaking it all down as it happens. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.